If tomorrow was the Stanley Cup Finals and a team loses 4-3 in overtime and you threw me at the press conference, I could probably answer all the questions. I could get in there and say, well, if we only would have pressed the puck a little bit harder, we fell asleep,
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Inside American Soccer. I am USMNT insider Tom Bogert, and I'm joined by one of the greatest players in USMNT history, Tab Ramos. Tab, I was doing a little yard work this morning while taking calls, so I come in looking a little bit less spiffy than you for people who are watching on YouTube. He's got a really nice fresh blue polo on. Second day of school action, Tab. You looking pretty nice.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I have to say, I really like the yard work part. So I wish I was doing a little bit more of that because I truly enjoy it. But I have to say, I'm excited. We started our school yesterday and, we got a bunch of kids here that are going to be with us all the way until June 14th, till the end of the school year. And we're excited about it. It's been 2 years of planning to get here. So yeah, it was a great day yesterday, the way we started, and we're looking forward to the rest of the week and the rest of the year.
Obviously, it'd be more fun to talk about the soccer aspect of everything you're doing right now with youth development and the school side, but more of the boring side and the administrative. I'm always interested at people, obviously, that come from the sports world like yourself, all of the achievements on the field and coaching and everything. You like to be tied to the game. How much of the administrative going, paperwork, getting permits, those kinds of things, were you hands-on for that kind of thing too? And are you somebody that can do that without it being difficult? Because my brain would melt trying to do that side of the aspect.
That's a great question, and it would take forever for me to finishing to answer that. No, but to be honest, I have a great partner, John Saunders, who's really, it was his idea a couple of years ago. It was his sort of his. It was his idea to come to me and sort of pitch it. We had worked together before, and he's done an amazing job. And what you're talking about, the back end platforms to get all this going, because there's the whole financial side, there's the whole school side, there's the whole, like you said, the permit side, because if you're going to start a school in 7th grade, it's different than if you start in 6th grade. You need different permits within the state of New Jersey if you have 6th grade and below than if you have 7th grade and above. So all of those things, I'm familiar with all of them, but I'm not hands-on with all of them, although I know what's going on at all times.
Good for you. I was hoping that you were going to say that. Nope, I've got, they say it's good. They do it. They're the experts. I handle the soccer side of things. Wash my hands of that, because for somebody like me, I'm just straight up incapable of a lot of the other things, which is not great in terms of a well-rounded human being, but I know my shortcomings. So glad that, unsurprisingly, you don't have the same ones. But let's get into the U.S. men's national team. The European seasons have started. We got a couple surprise starters from in and around the national team. I don't know if Yunus Musah counts as in and around the team anymore, but Tab, Yunus Musah was on the starting 11 for AC Milan and Ruben Amorim's debut. Christian Pulisic was not, as he continues to recover from injury. Should be back soon. But Tab, Yunus Musah, first of all, I thought he was for sure not going to be playing for AC Milan this year. And even if he was technically on the books at this time, I figured it was one of those train with the reserves while we find you a move, and he's back.
I have to say, I thought exactly like you, exactly what you said. But you do know that I'm a fan of Musah, and I've always liked him.
Yes, you are.
And I still like him, and I'm very happy to see that he played 90 minutes. He played in the center of the field, and he, although he didn't, I didn't think he had a great game. I thought he did well enough. And but it's great to see him play. He played 90 minutes for Milan, and I think. Listen, why not? I mean, this kid has I think, to me, he has always proven he's a good player, and I wish he would have been able to get a better look going into the last World Cup.
Yeah, it's just weird that he hasn't, when he was 18, 19, that looked like somebody who was going to make 100 caps, because he was just felt so advanced for his age, so clean, composed, and experienced for somebody. He was the calm presence that I would be content when the ball would come to his foot, that you just trust it. It kind of feels like he hasn't progressed since then, which is just a surprise to me. There's been a few moves. Maybe the moves haven't been perfect, but hindsight's 2020. I don't think any of them were dumb transfers. But he finds himself back at Milan after a little bit of upheaval. Again, a new manager comes in, new style. Maybe this will help him. They play the 3 at the back system. I want to see him in a midfield, particularly if it was like a midfield trio, but he can play that right wing back role. So maybe there'll be more minutes for him this season. Christian Pulisic, as I said, he didn't play, but he was on the bench, which I was pleasantly surprised by. But I a little bit just disappointed if he was fit enough for the bench that he didn't play. Maybe just a coach's decision, maybe just get him into the team as he recovers. And I don't think that there's any doubts that he'll be an integral part of Milan this year.
No, and that's what Amarin has said over and over again, that he's a big part of this team, and so we expect for him to start coming along. Obviously, he was injured. At least that's what we knew, and I'm sure his preseason is behind in comparison to the rest of the players, and because of it, I think he's probably not taking a chance with him at this point. But I do think that Pulisic will end up being a big part of Amarin's main group. And he will have to be, right, because he's at that point where he needs to be one of the leaders of this team.
Elsewhere in Italy, Juventus won. McKennie started again, of course. And he played mostly attacking midfield, but if you look at a Weston McKennie heat map, it's touchline to touchline, end line to end line. He'll pop up wherever he does because that's the kind of player he is. Nothing to stand out in very good or very bad. He was just solid, and they win 1-0 over Frosinone.
I mean, that's all. I think that's a good thing when another week goes by and we can say McKennie was McKennie this week. That's it. That's really what it's about. We can count on him, and he's definitely a key on our national team, and he can he keeps on trucking. That's it.
It's fun that we're at a stage where there's a regular key starter for Juventus, and we're just like, next thing. What else should we talk about? Because it's always funny looking back a dozen years ago. We would lead every single show with it, analyze every performance, talk about every moment, good, bad, or indifferent. And we're at a good point with American exports and American players in Europe that we can start with Milan or Juventus. We haven't talked about several players playing in the Premier League yet that we'll get to, but we can move to France where Tim Weah is captaining Marseille, Tab.
That's huge. And, and this is a good point you make about, McKennie just playing at Juventus every week. It wasn't, more than a couple decades ago where just getting free tickets to a Juventus game was a good in for an American in Europe. But, McKinney's there every week. And now we have Tim Weah at Marseille. Here's another great club in Europe that's won, Champions League. And it was great to see. Obviously, he played the full 90. He's the captain, important part of this team, and a great club. And he got to play against Reyna for a little while, right? Because even Gio got a few minutes at the end.
Yeah, that was interesting. Good to see that he's playing, and playing seems to be going to have a role, at least at the beginning of the season. I was a little bit dubious of that. I was a little bit worried. So that's a good start for Gio Reyna. Again, he played 20 minutes in that loss. Elsewhere in France, Balogun was not in the matchday squad for Monaco. I'm still expecting a departure before the end of the transfer window. That closes on September 1st in most places in Europe. We'll see where he goes. There's been reporting around Monaco that they have a couple signings lined up that they're waiting on to finalize and pursue because they're waiting for Balogun and another player to depart. And I'm assuming that's why this has taken as long as it has, because at some point you have to get to the crunch time of the transfer window. Will he or won't he? With the buying clubs, are we going to try to lowball because we know Monaco wants to sell? Is there a number where Monaco would say, hey, we're just happy to keep him? So I think it's just more about a staring contest, Tab, of the buying clubs or the clubs that are interested trying to get the very best deal because they know Monaco are incentivized to sell at this point. But Monaco partly are incentivized to sell because they figured it would make the most sense this summer if he's not signing a new contract. So there's a lot going on here, but Tab, I still expect him to leave.
Yeah, and I think that may be what happens. I think could be seeing a little bit of what happened with Pepi and PSV at the beginning of the year, where the deal was all set to go somewhere else, but until PSV could find a replacement for him, they didn't really want to move. And I think that might be the case. I think at this point, Monaco may be looking for the right type of forward to replace him. If there's one thing Monaco has done really, really, really well over the last 10 years is get young players and sell them for a lot of money. And I think they know how to find the right talent, and they're probably looking for the right talent at this point to be able to have them step in as soon as Flo is gone.
In Spain, Alex Freeman, Johnny Cardoso, Villarreal played Atletico Madrid. Neither of them got off the bench. Both were unused subs in their 2-2 draw. In England, Brendan Arrington started for Leeds in a win. Chris Richards started for Crystal Palace in a loss. Those are two guys that are going to be key parts of their teams. Aronson will probably talk about more because that's the nature of attacking players. And Chris Richards, as we've said all summer, is an anchor, a stalwart of this Crystal Palace team. We'll see how they get on without Oliver Glasner as the manager. I think that they'll be fine. Maybe they won't hit the same exact heights. It'd be difficult for Crystal Palace to hit the heights that they did over the last 2 years because it was historic for their club. The first 2 trophies in a century or half a century, whatever it was. This is not a team that had been used to winning titles, and they win the FA Cup. They win the Conference League. So anything over the next few years that isn't back-to-back relegations is going to be gravy for this Crystal Palace team. And for right now, Chris Richards will be a key part.
Yeah, and that's how we look at it. I think, in last week's show when we spoke with Matt Doyle about, he talked about Chris Richards potentially having the best season of any American in Europe. He may, but I think this Crystal Palace team will make it hard for him because, as we mentioned, here's the thing about the EPL. Even if you're a good team, now you switch coaches, you have someone new coming in, and the EPL is just. It's just deadly. The way the teams rebuild. I mean, look at what Chelsea's done. Look at the money that's spent by all these teams to rebuild. And it's hard for Crystal Palace to keep up. And at some point you have to think, hey, you know what? They're going to have a down season. And I think this is going to be a difficult season for them. I think he'll do well. I think Crystal Palace will do well. But I think doing well may be, landing somewhere between, 13th and 16th at the end of the year. That might be doing well for them.
And we'll see what they can do in a Europa League run. That'll be very fun, particularly after they won the Conference League. And you talk about the money spent in England. Just look at the 3 promoted clubs, how much money that they've thrown around it. It's really something. We all know the financial power that the Premier League has, but man, Hull City are outspending, like the 4th team in Italy, or give or take something. It's really incredible, and it's difficult to be even a mid-table English team because year over year you can get dragged down to a relegation battle because there's so many good teams and there's so much money within that league. Maybe Middlesbrough will be there next year, Tab, with the 3 Americans trying to lead them to promotion. But yeah, there's a lot of Americans playing abroad. One more that I want to hit on is the American duo at PSV, Ricardo Pepi, Serginho Dest. They both scored a big win. Ho-hum for PSV in the Eredivisie. They are going to be favorites. They're going to score a lot of goals. Both of these players will be starters for as long as they're at the club. And, ho-hum, all is good there.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, they score a lot of goals. I mean, they scored already 9 goals in 3 games to start the season, PSV. So they're on their way again. I do think, to give a little bit of credit to Ajax, who's been obviously one of the bigger disappointments in world football over the last few years. I mean, you couldn't describe it any other way for Ajax.
Right.
I'm hoping that this new rebuild now will start to make them competitive. And I think the Dutch league, if you don't have Ajax and Feyenoord being real competitive at the top of the table, with PSV, you can't think much of the league, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that this year is a little bit more competitive. Of course, PSV is doing, Ernie Stewart's doing a great job there with his team, but I'm hoping that Ajax and Feyenoord really, really make a strong run this year.
A couple things stateside. Cavan Sullivan scored for the Philadelphia Union after he had a midweek red card against Inter Miami rescinded, which I think was the right decision. And he scores against Austin. Just playing really, really well. Tab, I don't know how much you saw of the Philly and Miami and the red card that he got, but his brother is getting walked over by Ian Frey. Quinn Sullivan kind of body slams him, and Cavan is the first one there. And it's very funny because before the game, he had an interview with the broadcast and was just talking about like the Philly fighting mentality. And he meant it figuratively, not literally. And then he's the first guy into kind of a fracas for his literal brother, not just when you call your teammate your brother. He was there to back up Quinn. And while he showed fight, like he got hands to his face multiple times by a Miami player, and he held his cool, which is much more than I could say about myself at 16 or probably even 31. If somebody put their hands on my face. So I give Cavan Sullivan credit. That's why I was glad that he got vindicated by his red card being rescinded. And he scored for the Union against Austin. And he's, again, I've said it a few times, he's taken a leap, and it's really, really fun to watch.
No, I mean, I think it says a lot about Cavan and his ability to be strong and not be afraid, right? I think that's how I see it. I mean, I don't think the incident was a big deal, to be honest. I wouldn't hold it against him in any way. I mean, he just stepped in front of a team. But the fact that he's 16 years old, you serious? You know, I'm just thinking of my kids at home when they're 16 years old, you know, and here he is, you know, he's stepping in front of, you know, grown men and saying, get away from my brother here. And, I give him a lot of credit. As you know, Tom, and maybe this is a little bit of a New Jersey thing too. You know, I like feisty players. You know, I like that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's zero wrong. As a matter of fact, I think more of him now than I did before because this kid's not afraid of anything. And by the way, you know, we've been calling on this show already, is it 3 weeks, where we said something's going on, but he's different now than before the World Cup. And he's different so much that we think that he should probably get called to the national team on the next one. And I will continue to say that. I like what he's doing. I think this is not an average player when you watch him, regardless of the age. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's 16 and he's the dangerous player on Philadelphia Union, and when he gets the ball, that I'm anxious to see what he's going to do next. I mean, I can't find a single negative sign. I think is all plus signs for him, and I hope to see him on the national team soon.
Yeah, you and me both. I was speaking to people at the Union, was writing something about Cavan recently, and they were like, during the World Cup break, with the players, I was very happy for them that they all got time off, well-deserved time off, particularly the veterans. But Cavan Sullivan would have had every right to just do training on his own, but, you know, more or less take a beat. He came to the club and he said, I want to keep playing. The second team is playing. I want to go train and play with them. And he did. And this is a player that would have every right to be like, I'm beyond the second team, because he is. He has nothing left to prove there. It's not as if it would help his development for like long-term being there, but he's like, instead of taking a few weeks off, I want to play. And he did. And he played in a closed door friendly against the Ivory Coast for the Philadelphia Union too. When the Ivory Coast was camped in Philly ahead of the World Cup, they were getting kind of minutes in their legs. Cavan played against the Ivory Coast and he put up his own highlight reel. And somebody who was at the game was like, hey, like he showed like a lot. And like you saw the clips, right? He goes, he wasn't just that. Like he was defending hard. He was, making simple plays. He was tracking back. Like he didn't just show up in that game to be like, I'm going to try to do some cool stuff because it's a friendly. It's not my team. Who cares? It's just really cool to see. And the people around the club just constantly rave about his mentality. And I think you're seeing it here. And I'm certain that he's been putting in the extra time for a long time. It's not just his God-given skill and the skill that he's honed. It's his continual work rate. It's not just because he was training over the World Cup break. It's things that he's been doing for a long, long time that we're seeing him get this kind of breakthrough. He had a first breakthrough of like playing time, and now he's the breakthrough of a really productive player.
When you put it that way, there's nothing more than Philadelphia fans would want from an athlete representing them, right? I think he embodies everything they would want to see, and that's really important. But by the way, this is what we want to see of our national team too. These guys, right? Players like him who are fully committed. And this is how you get better, by the way. Yeah, of course he may be in some people's eyes, he may be past, the Philadelphia 2 team, but these are all good experiences for him. And I think he's taken full advantage of them. And that's good to see. And that's why I believe he'll continue to get better.
I agree. Last one here for me, Matt Turner and Matt Freese played against each other this weekend in MLS. And the two of them were awesome in a 1-1 draw. Matt Freese in particular had a double save, a penalty, and then the follow-up from Carlos Hill. It was really, really good. So I thought it was fitting that the number 1 and number 2 at the World Cup for the United States, they played really well in an MLS game against each other. And there's still going to be long-term questions about the goalkeeping spot, but these are the two players who gobbled up all the minutes. They'll obviously Freeze more than Turner. And they played against each other, and both showed out this weekend, Tab.
Yeah, no, it's good to see. Obviously, we can always talk about how, we think that, in terms of goalkeeping, we should be at a different place than where we are now. But the fact is, these are the best goalkeepers we have at the moment. And I think if we can support them and in particular, be supportive in moments when they're doing really well, like now, why not? They need the confidence, and as long as we can give it to them, I think it only helps the team more.
All right, that's the weekend recap around the U.S. men's national team. But it's time for a quick break. Up next, I'm going to ask Tab a couple of questions. So please stick around, rate, review, subscribe to Inside American Soccer with Tom Bogert and Tab Ramos, wherever you get your podcast. Welcome back to Inside American Soccer. Tab, I want to put you in the hot seat, throw a couple questions at you, see where we go. We'll be a mix of serious, fun, wherever we go. Who knows? I want to start with one. We've dabbled on it a little bit about whether it's development at U.S. Soccer, structure of the federation, who's starting right back or goalkeeper, center forward. I wanted to get your thoughts on kind of a overarching question around the federation. If you were in charge of U.S. Soccer, what is the one thing you do in that day?
Well, this is actually it's a great question, and we could take it. We could have some fun with it. But I always like to say that I'm what my opinion is. I think is based on not the years I played, because I think when I played, I didn't learn enough about the game. I only started to learn more about the game when I started to take my coaching licenses. That's when I really, truly started to learn about the game. And then in particular, more not only coaching through the youth system, but when I started to coach at U.S. Soccer, when I had the opportunity to coach some of the best players in the country and see what they look like when they're 17 and 18 years old and 19 years old. And then becoming technical director of U.S. Soccer, I got to see all the way down to sort of U14, all the best players. What is it that they do? How can we make them better? How can we provide better competition for them? And so I think, sometimes when I speak, I speak based on my experience. And certainly I don't ever think that I have all the right answers. I just have an opinion, and that's all that is. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's constructive. So I'd start answering your question by saying first, I would look, if there was something that I could change, what I would change at U.S. Soccer is that I feel like from a fan standpoint, and from, let's say, a media standpoint, and from coaching standpoint, everyone that's outside of U.S. Soccer, I feel like there's just not enough accountability at U.S. Soccer. But I don't say that in general because they're not doing, like, there's anyone in particular not doing a good job. I'm saying accountability only because I'm saying, I'd like to know who is responsible for different things, right? So for example, you and I could start talking right now about youth development, and we could talk about scouting for U.S. Soccer, for example, right? So most people will think, like, when something comes to us as news from U.S. Soccer, it will be U.S. Soccer says X, right? Mm-hmm. U.S. Soccer is now going to change youth development and make it this way. U.S. Soccer's scouting system is now going to look this way. When U.S. Soccer names a new national team coach, it's usually U.S. Soccer names a U.S. national team coach. I think if there was one thing I could change is I would make people responsible. So what I would do is I would name certainly a technical director for the men's side, and I would name a technical director for the women's side that's in charge of running the soccer part. So that all of us, and when I say we, obviously not me, I say fans, I say coaches out in the market, players, everyone else, media, they know who to go to, so that we have someone to ask questions to. Because I think sometimes when someone gets hired at U.S. Soccer, whether it's this senior national team coach or somebody that works in scouting, it comes to us from U.S. Soccer, and it doesn't come with the right answers from the right people. So if for example, JT Batson was going to tell us that, was going to come out next week and announce that U.S. Soccer is doing something new for the youth, who do we ask the questions to? Why can't we have a technical director who is in charge of this, who has maybe a press conference once a month to explain where we are, where we're going, where that's above the day in and day out, but someone who is responsible for our sort of our way, our ideas about how we're going to develop our style of play, all of those things. At the moment, let me give you an example. If for whatever reason Mauricio Pochettino doesn't work out over the next 12, 18 months, and we decide, hey, this is terrible. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but hey, this is terrible. We have to get rid of the coach. Who do we ask about that? Like, who was the person? And I know that we answered that on this show. We said, okay, well, it was Helfrich, and it was JT Basson, and it was Cindy Cohn, and it was a bunch of other people who helped them. No, but who? Who has the idea that this coach is going to take us to a certain place? And by the way, that's just the coaching side. I would say the same for our style of play. I would say the same for our youth national teams. I would say the same for our scouting, right? There has to be somebody. It can't be U.S. Soccer. So if there was one thing I would change is I would make people responsible, people that we can ask questions of. That's all.
That's very interesting. And I didn't see you going that way, but I do like that as an answer. As a follow-up, so when you were, I guess that you didn't do a ton of press conferences at U20. When you were the head coach of like the Houston Dynamo, how did you enjoy handling media? How often were you as honest as you could be? How did you kind of manage that side of your job when you were an MLS head coach?
I don't know if there's anybody that enjoys press conferences. And I did.
Jose Mourinho, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think I was always good to the media. You know, whatever they ever required from me, I was there. You know, I always showed my face and took the blame, you know, for losses. I always gave the credit to the players for wins. You know, I think I did all the things that a coach is supposed to do. But let's be honest, Tom, if tomorrow by the way, I don't watch hockey, right? I don't watch hockey. But if tomorrow was the Stanley Cup Finals and a team loses 4-3 in overtime and you threw me at the press conference, I could probably answer all the questions. You know, I could get in there and say, well, you know, if we only would have pressed the puck a little bit harder, you know, we fell asleep. You know, you can answer. All the answers are the same. So press conferences are, you know, so now, because I think it's different, right? I think it's different. You know, when you after a game, and I think it's different when you're asking about, you know, midterm goals and long-term goals. And this is what we're doing. And, you know, we're going to play 4-3-3. And we are looking for players in our account, in our scouting system who can really receive defeat in the middle of the field, that can really, we're going to be a national team 4 years from now who wants to keep the ball all the time. That's our idea. So then 3-4 years from now, we can evaluate and say, hey, you know what? This has really failed. And you know what? Tab failed with what he wanted to do, because that's what he said. He's been telling us all along. He wants to play this way. And by the way, all of the time that we've had him in press conference, he said, this is what we've done towards that goal. This is what we're doing now towards that goal. So we're going in a direction, which, by the way, may not be the right direction because, and as far as I know, by the way, other than Johan Cruyff, I think, and I would say Manny Shelshide in New Jersey, but other than those two people, I would say most people at some point, regardless of their ideas, at some point their ideas get old, right? And they don't work anymore and somebody else comes on. But I'd like to really be able to have conversations with somebody who is qualified enough to answer all the questions.
I bet that we could have done a fake pre-game and post-game press conference with you. Doesn't insert opponent X. You'd be like, oh, they're a great team. They defend really well. They've got good structure. It's going to be difficult. We're going to have to work hard to beat them, break them down. And then say, you know, after the guy was a good opponent, we were lucky. We worked hard. We're fortunate to. I bet that you could have had all of those lines ready to go. Like you said, two different things between planning a big picture and a head coach having to do that.
Yeah, because I think a technical director position is much different, right? You cover a lot. So you cover, obviously you have your senior national team, and now you pick a coach that's going to pick, first of all, you have an overarching style of play of what you want your country to look like. And now you pick a national team coach. That's just one little part of it. You pick a national team coach who may last a couple of years or may not, right? And then you have your style of play that you're developing through your youth national teams. And then you have your scouting that brings the players into the national team. They're all underneath your overarching way that you want to play, right? So now any question that you can answer, they're all these things are connected to the top, to this is what we're going to look like at the end, right? So that's sort of, if I had to look for something, that's kind of, and forget all of the C-level executives that have some answers and, you know, okay, you played soccer 30 years ago. That's great, you know, and it's good that you know that it's 11 against 11. That's all you need to know. The rest of it, just go get some money so that we can run all the programs. That's how I feel about the C-level executives. But then let's have some soccer people that can answer the questions, you know, because there's a lot of kids out there. There's a lot of coaches out there that really need a direction, right? And if they knew, hey, look what our national program is doing. Look what they're doing for the youth national team. We want to do that. We want to be part of that. And that's connected to the coaching education and everything else, which, of course, it's all connected now. I'm not inventing anything, by the way.
Right.
This is all connected already. I would just like to see someone who can give us the message in terms of, like, this is exactly, I'm the soccer person. This is what we're doing, right? Instead of hearing it from an executive, which really doesn't connect with me or coaches or players or anyone that's really in soccer every day.
That's very interesting. One more on like the youth side of things. What is the right balance, particularly in a country so large as ours, of trying to have a centralized style, like a continuous style, so that when you go from the U15 youth national team to the U17s to the U21s into this, that there's continuity and you're not having brand new kind of tactics and ideas and everything, versus like the diversity of talent, thought, skills across a country as large as ours. Where do you find a middle ground in, we want to have principles that everybody is learning or everybody cares about, but also we don't want to make, Tab, as you've said in the past, every academy game 4-3-3 playing out of the back, center backs go wide, the DMs, like every team trying to play the same way?
And that's a great question, because I would answer that by saying, Spain is kind of the same. Spain, we know Spain for playing a certain style, right? But yet in Spain, if you look at let's forget the Barcelona players, because we know they play exactly how the Spanish national team play. So let's take a player from Basque Country, right? Bilbao, Real Sociedad, Eibar, like that area, and let's take players from Seville, like Betis, Sevilla, in the lower part of Spain, Andalusia, Granada, Malaga, completely different. These are like different countries in terms of soccer. Like in Andalusia, they like to see the flashy players who make a couple of flashy moves here and there, and they like the fancy style of playing, let's say. Whereas in Basque Country, they like serious players who work hard. Those guys are going to work. And by the way, I'm not saying they're certainly not bad players. It's, Xavi Alonso, like all these guys are all Basque guys, but there's a certain style to who they are, right? And same you can say for Galicia and La Coruña and Celta Vigo and those kind of clubs, right? So they're all different, but they all blend into the national team, because that's the way the national team play. Ultimately, someone has to make the call and say, this is the way we're going to play. And then you start picking players that fit into your system.
When I'm trying, maybe one more youth development for serious one before I hit you with a couple more fun ones. Twofold. One, I know that you appreciate talent from everywhere in the country. There's arguments about, is Florida the best for soccer players? Southern California, New Jersey, or the tri-state area maybe, or where would you say is the best? St. Louis, again, you go on down the list, there's plenty of places where pro players come from. Where was consistently the best areas for soccer, or was it always changing?
No, it's been pretty consistent over the year that in general, let's just say in general, the best players were coming from Southern California and from Dallas, Texas. That's sort of the two areas where you can say, hey, there's a number of players who, and that's, by the way, based on a type of player. And that was usually the skillful player, the player that was really comfortable on the ball. And that's why those players could always fit into any team you put together, right? Whereas, New Jersey, of course, we've had skillful players in New Jersey. Claudio Reyna, you can go on with the list, because we've had a lot. We've been really fortunate. But there's also that hardness about the New Jersey players. So maybe, there may be a coach who's coaching a team who says, I can only use a couple of those guys. I don't want too many. There's the northern part in the Midwest. And what is that known for? It's known for having players a little bit like, let's say, like Basque Country, right? Where the players are hard. And of course you're going to have some that are really skillful, some that are just really only physical. But the bottom line with those guys are going to be like they're going to work hard all the time, just like the New Jersey players are going to fight all the time. the players from that part of the country, they're always going to work hard. And then the players in Dallas are going to have a good combination of both being skillful and being able to cover ground and wanting to win, right? And the LA players are a little bit more of in general, the flashier players, the players with the most skill of anyone else, right? So you start picking things apart, and then you can still put a team together with people who fit into what you want to do.
In your playing career, or I guess coaching career, maybe we would leave Metro Stars out of it because you're going to be biased of where you're from. What was your favorite place to live?
Wow. I loved living in Seville. Seville was such a great place. The food and just the city, was huge. But I really enjoyed also living in Figueras. The first team I signed in Europe was called UE Figueras, which was a little town right on the coast, right next to France.
Wow.
35 minutes north of Girona. About 40 minutes south of Perpignan, France. So it was right on the Mediterranean. It was just a beautiful place to live. So I was lucky to be able to live in those. But I would definitely pick Spain if I had to pick a country to live in.
Oh, that's really cool. Going to go back then. So we're coaching. We went pro. College. Any good NC State stories come to mind? I pulled up your stats. Obviously, they're top 10 in program history. All of that good stuff. But when you think about your days at college soccer, what comes to mind?
Wow. I'll start with
three-time All-American, by the way, for the people listening.
No, I'll start with a negative one. So my freshman year, my freshman year when I went to NC State, obviously I wanted to go pro, but unfortunately I got drafted by the Cosmos that year, and the league was going to fold. It was the last year of the league, so it was recommended to me to go to college because NASL was going to fold. So if I went to the NASL, I would be there 1 year, and then I'd lose my college eligibility. Right. So that's what it was.
Right.
So I went to NC State, and I played my freshman season. I was with our U20s, actually. So I got to NC State because of our World Cup qualifying, went into, I think, early September, maybe like the first week. So
interesting.
Yeah, so I missed like the first 2 games at NC State. I think I got in, me and a couple other guys that were in the youth national team, by the way, that we all went to NC State. So we missed the first couple games. We joined, I think, the 3rd game and played the rest of the season. The season was average at best. And I remember sitting in college in January at one point, just sitting in my room going, kind of thinking, well, what am I doing? What am I doing? I thought I was going to be a professional player. Here I am in college. I actually, I got to school about 2 weeks ago. I haven't even touched a ball in 2 weeks. This is the first time in my life. Like I hadn't even touched a ball. I got there, I started to go to class, and then we were going to start training the following week, but I hadn't touched a ball in a couple of weeks. And then it started to come together a little bit more. Obviously, I had a great coach in George Starantini, who was connected overseas because his brother had played in the World Cup, and he's the one that started to connect me to some trials in Europe and things like that, which at the time, back then it was really difficult for any American guy to go to Europe and play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in general, I loved NC State. We had great teams. At one point, I think we had 5 U.S. U20 national team players and 4 Nigeria U20 national team players.
Oh my God.
So we had great teams, but I'd have to say overall in all of my years, we made it to the NCAAs every year, but we were like the biggest disappointment in the country year after year. So it was in general, it was not good. I mean, it was not good.
What happened? Do you have one year where you were like, maybe it was your last one, or was there any like, God, I can't believe that we didn't win?
Yeah, well, my junior year, I want to say we likely had the best team in the country. Clemson ended up winning 2 national championships when I was there, so they were like right down the road. But I remember, I think my junior year we were ranked fairly. We were always in the top 5 or 6, and I think my junior year we got a really high seed in the region. I think we were number 1 in the South, which was good for us because we got a bye in the first round, and we hosted Duke in the second round. So we thought, okay, that's pretty easy. A bye first round, and we host the second round, and we hosted the second round and lost. So. So we didn't even win a game. We thought we were going to win the national championship, and we didn't even win a game. So, yeah, that was not a great year for us.
One more topic. Again, I want to read to the people listening. At St. Benedict's Prep, Tab Ramos scored 161 goals in 4 years. Do the math, people listening, from whatever age, 13 or 14 to 17 or 18, 161 goals playing high school soccer from the midfield, including 57 your senior year. Is that the most fun you've ever had playing soccer? Like, I can't imagine anything like that.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you look at the quantity of goals, that's still not what Messi or Ronaldo did at the highest level.
You played for 3 months. That season's for 3 months.
Okay, well that's true. That's not. But it actually was only 20 games in the season. So I did play exactly 80 games. I played 80 games. No, but I'll tell you the funniest part of that. The funniest part is that I went to St. Benedict's as a 7th grader, but they had me go practice with the varsity. And they put me on the freshman team. I never went to 8th grade. I skipped 8th grade. So I went right to high school. I scored 27 goals my freshman year, but I was really an 8th grader. I wasn't even a freshman.
That's so funny.
So that was fun. Because on top of it, I was playing some of the guys on my team where some of them were wrestlers getting ready for their season. And, our season records were normally 13-7 or, it wasn't like we were just killing everybody.
It's crazy.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I love St. Benedict's. That was a great time.
For people in New Jersey, like growing up when I did, like St. Benedict's was like it and still is an absolute powerhouse. So I just assumed that you were there because they were the best school. Getting closer and closer with you and relearning all of these kind of older stories of like, oh no, like that was just another team, and then you guys showed up, and then all of a sudden you're a powerhouse.
Well, my freshman year, I remember because it wasn't my freshman year; I was just an 8th grader. Yeah. But St. Benedict's had never had a winning season in soccer.
That's insane to me.
So I get to St. Benedict's, and I'm like, this is the funny part because Father Edwin, who's the headmaster there, and they had a soccer coach who was also basketball or something like that at the time. And they bring me in for a tryout. And the tryout, I go in with my parents and the tryout was I had to dribble around cones and I had to juggle the ball. That was the tryout.
Were you nervous?
No, but I'll tell you this. We did a tour of St. Benedict's. And this tells you about my parents and my family, everything you need to know. But we go to St. Benedict's, we go through the whole tour, and then we go back home, back to Kearney. And when I get back there, my parents go, "So what did you think of the tour of St. Benedict's?" And I said, yeah, well, really, I don't want to go there, because I got to take the 39 bus to go there. I said, I don't want to go there. And they're like, oh, that's too bad because we decided that you're going to go there. That's the way it worked with my parents. So then it was like. Then I knew, like, for my freshman year, I had to take the public bus to get to Newark, but that's kind of how that worked.
Legendary school, legendary time. Tab, thank you for letting me go on a long-winded ride there for a bunch of questions. Thank you to all for listening. I could do this forever, but we'll cut it here. Thanks again for tuning in to Inside American Soccer. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast.